Welcome to the class. Kathak poetry is a very important aspect of Kathak, and the lyrics poetry, mainly concentrated around Krishna, have come down from various poets. And it is said that when Krishna danced his divine dance on the hood of the defeated serpent Kalya in Kalyadaman, various mnemonic sounds emanated from Krishna's feet like Ta, Thai, Tata, etc., which form the building blocks of Kathak. Krishna, as you know, is known as Natavar, and hence the sounds that came to be known as what? Natavari, of course. What is more, the Kathak dance mnemonics are intertwined into the text of the poetry of the Ashtachap Kavis. That these poets were deeply entrenched in the allied arts of dance and music is suggested by the fact that the Surdas employed as many as 36 different ragas and raginis, and one of the Surdas Pada, Nritya Karata Ughata Sangeeta Pada, the great glory of this age of Bhakti poetry, which incidentally coincide with the Elizabethan age of English literature, and that is Tulsidas. Tulsidas and Surdas, between them, are held to have exhausted the possibilities of the poetic art. There was a time when the common men could not understand the Ramayana as it was written in Sanskrit. It was Tulsidas who simplified it by translating it into the language of the common people and made the divine epic accessible to all. Tulsidas is considered to be one of the greatest of Hindu saints of India. He is considered to be one of the most famous representatives of the Bhakti school of Hinduism. His literary work was most impressive. He was a Sanskrit scholar, yes, but he is known for his works in Awadhi, a dialect of Hindi. He was particularly known for his Tulsi Krut Ramayana. This is also known as, very popularly known, and you all know, is Ramcharitmanasa. The popular legend has it that he was helped in this process by none other than Hanumana, who not only advised him to write it, but to do it in the Chitrakoot. It is also believed in popular lore that Hanumana himself came to his aid each time Tulsidas faltered, because he wanted to tale of his master to be known even in this age, and so he supported its retelling in the language of the people. In 1976, the Kathak Kendra presented a ballet called Katha Raghunath Ki, choreographed by Pandit Birju Maharaj, that was based on the excerpts from Ramcharitmanas and other writings of Tulsidas. The song Thumaka Chalata Ramachandra, I am sure that you all have heard and maybe danced to that, is one of the best known poems of Tulsidas. The Kathak queen Sitara Devi was well known for her rendering of the song that she continued even when she was in her 80s, and it was believed that by many that none could do it better than her. Sitara Devi's style of unabashed dancing gelled well with the Thumak oriented dance of little Ramachandra. It remains as one of the most popular songs in the repertoire for young children and also senior dancers. But there was more to Tulsidas than a close association with Ramayana. In all, he composed 22 major literary works of his lifetime. He is also well known for his Hanuman Chalisa. Even the Hanuman Chalisa has become a subject for enactment by Kathak dancers, as was choreographed on the students of Shobhinaya Kala Kendra, drawing inspiration from Chandigarh based Jaipur Gharana dancer Shobha Kosar. Even Gaiye Ganapati Jagavandana is a Tulsidas composition. Many dancers like the Banaras Gharana duo Nalini and Kamalini use it as the refrain that they then enrich with the elaborate Ganesh Parans that are the highlight of Banaras and Jaipur Gharanas. Tulsidas wrote in a very poetic, lucid, and expressive style while remaining scholarly, with subtle and enriching bhava infusing the padas. Devotion and reverence are the overriding rasas permeating his writings. Pune based Kathak dancer Sonali Chakravarti did an entire performance called Discovering Tulsidas through Kathak that took you through the highlights of the story, starting with the Ganesh Vandana and concluding with Rama Charana Sukhadai in Bhairavi. Pune based senior Kathak artist Roshan Daite used Tulsidas' composition known as the Ardhanari Nateshwara Pada in her work based on the condition of the environment to show that traditionally we had a far more sensitive and respectful view of the environment, linking it to the gods and their aspirations and powers. The words of the pada are Dekho Dekho Manyo, Aaj Umakant, Mana Dekhan Aaye Riti Basant. Tulsidas died about 1623 in Assi Ghat in Varanasi. It be noted that the period of Middle Hindi begins with the reign of Akbar Emperor, and it is not improbable that his sympathy with his Hindu subjects and the peace which he organization of the empire secured had an important effect on the great development of Hindi poetry, which now set in. Akbar's court was itself a center of poetical composition, and Sanskrit works were translated into Persian. The court musician Tansen is still renowned, and many verses composed by him in the emperor's name survive to this day. Akbar's favorite minister and companion Raja Birbal was a musician and a poet and held the title of Kabirai or poet laureate. His verses and witty sayings are still popular in northern India. Other nobles of the courts were also poets, among them Khan Khanan Abdur Rahim, whose dohas and kavits are still esteemed, and Faizi, brother of analyst Abdul Fazl. By this time, the worship of Krishna as the lover of Radha Vallabha, had been systemized, with its chief habitation at Gokul near Mathura. It was here that the Vallabhacharya had lived, and where lived his son Vitthal Nath, who succeeded him in the Pushti Marg. In 1530s, it is believed that Swami Haridas went to Vitthal Nath to seek permission for the enactment of Rasa Leela. Swami Haridas himself wrote poetry that seemed to be describing Kathak. Adbhuta Gati Upajat Ati Nrittat Doyu Mandala Kumvar Kishori Sakala Sugandha Anga Bhari Bhori Piya Nrittat Muskan Mukhamori Parirambhana Rasarori. Despite popular perception, the Rasa Leela is not just the enactment of Rasa, but also enactment of all the Leelas, Janam Leela, Kamsa Bandha Leela, Uddhav Leela, and others, culminating in the Rasa Leela. For many years, Uma Sharma presents a Maharasa Leela at the Birla Mandir in Delhi on the occasion of Sarat Purnima. Uma Sharma's interest in the Rasa Leela grew when she began visiting Braj and met the renowned Rasadari Ladali Sharanji and Devki Nandanji. Inspired by them, she made a study of the poetry that is employed by them and the Nritta pieces. This she incorporates in her dance separately. From collection of beautiful poetry found in the Rasalila tradition and the writings of other Braj poets, she has created special thematic presentations like Sri Ladhe. She also presents the art of the Rasadharis as part of the larger Maharasalila. Scholar Rekha Trigunayat wrote her doctoral thesis for Bhatakhande Sangeet Vidyalaya on वृज भाषा के कृष्ण भक्ति साहित्य में कथक नृत्य की ताल निकी शब्दावली का विवेचन. The character of Hindi literature during this period grew and flourished through its own original forces, founded by a popular and religious impulse comparable to that which nearly 1600 before had produced the doctrine and vernacular literature of Jainism and Buddhism and had cultivated largely by non-Brahmin authors. It was the legitimate descendant in spirit, as Hindi is in speech, of Prakrit literature. Entirely in verse, it adopted and elaborated Prakrit metrical forms and carried them to a high pitch of perfection. It employed a variety of languages, including an indefinable mixture of languages that was called Shuddha Kadi, reflecting the bowl of the mendicant that contained whatever he was offered in the day, all mixed up. It was a period of giving and taking, not just for new ideas, but lingual impulses, musical genres, and dance forms. Most of the poetry that was used for dance was Shagun poetry, and though Kabir and Nanak were popular, their poetry was not used then for dance. Subsequently, the inclusive nature of Kathak is such that in the 20th century, even Nirguna Bhakti poetry found use in Kathak. Kolkata-based Ashim Bandhu Bhattacharya has used the poetry of Nanak as an invocation or abhinaya piece. Several dancers do use Nirgun poets for the invocation and to set the mood with the grandeur of abstract movements. Anurekha Ghosh, based in the United Kingdom and a disciple first of Pratap Pawar and then Nahid Siddiqui, is one of them. In their choreography called Colors of Fire, Anirudh and Vidhilal use the following doha by Kabir to suggest the red color. Lali mere lal ki, jite dekhun tit lal, lali dekhan मैं गई, मैंने भी हो गई लाल. Rajendra Gangani's disciple Bharti Dang, trained in Kathak of the Jaipur Ghara and folk dances, has created a ballet called Kabir for her Shubha dance company, with using both classical Kathak and folk dance elements. Kathak dancer and teacher Dr. Vidhi Nagar also created a ballet production, Kabir the Weaver, using the poetry of Kabir. For the Kabir festival in 2015, dancer Sanjukta Wagh explored the poetry of Kabir through Kathak in her piece Bhitar Bahar, as did Gopi Krishna's disciple Rajendra Chaturvedi, who along with his troupe performed the finale of the Kabir festival in Mumbai in 2011. One of Akbar's Navaratnas or 9 gems was Abdul Rahim Khan, a Khana famous for his dohas or 2-line couplets. Abdul Rahim Khan, a Khana, was Prince Salim's tutor but did not support his rebellion against Akbar. After Akbar's death, he was stripped from his position in court and expelled from his kingdom. As Rahim was of spiritual bent of mind, he lived out his life with dignity. His well-known doha is बड़ा हुआ तो क्या हुआ, जैसे पेड़ खजूर, पांची को छाया नहीं, फल लागे अति दूर. Another one is रहीमन धागा प्रेम का, मत तोड़ो चिकताई, टूटे से फिर ना जुड़े, जुड़े घट पड़ी जाए. these dohas are too short to dance to, but for a long time there has been a tradition in Kathak of using doha to start a composition or insert it at a critical point. This was something that was part of the way the Kathavachaks and the Tavaifs also handled their art. Bhakti poetry covered a wide range of styles and, at its best, expressed a rich variety of human feelings. Above all, it is genuinely popular. To this day, this poetry is carried about everywhere by wandering minstrels and have found their way to the hearts of the people. A period of artifice and reflection followed when many works were composed dealing with the rules of poetry and analysis and appropriate language of the sentiment. Specially famous is Keshavdas, a Brahman of Bundelkhand, who flourished in the regions of Akbar and Jahangir in the state of Orchha. Keshavdas hailed from a family that had been recognized for its literary contribution in Sanskrit, but he wrote in Braj Bhasha. This was unusual for a poet who was in the court setting, but Keshavdas was not alone in leaving behind Sanskrit, as it is evident from the success of the Bhakti poets, who produced the new vernacular devotional works that abandoned Sanskrit, which had been the traditional language of religion and that of Brahmins. Yet their songs were sung communally rather than in isolation. A large part of the success of Keshavdas can be attributed to the paradox that he used Sanskrit tradition in his vernacular poetry. The rise to significance of Keshavdas was also influenced by the policies of the time. The Mughal Empire held sway in the area, with Orchha being a tributary state. The tributary rulers asserted their remaining power through the cultural channels, and Keshavdas continued to be associated with Orcha's court. His best known works are the three anthologies of poems, that is Rasik Priya of 1591, Ramachandrika of 1600 and Kavi Priya of 1601. The Rasik Priya classifies heroes and heroines in different stages of maturity or experience and describes their various reactions to similar situations. Most of the attention is given to the reactions of the heroines, who are cleverly analyzed in circumstances caused by Krishna every time as a very aggressive lover and offer a philanderer. The episodes involve not only the hero and heroine, that is Krishna and Radha, but her female companions or Sakhis as well. They serve as codifiants and messengers for the lovers. Keshavdas describes 360 circumstances of love. He composed the work to entertain his patron, the Raja of Orcha. Kavipriya is on the laws of poetry, and Ramchandrika is an abridged translation of Ramayana in 30 sections. Rasik Priya has been danced by Kathak dancer Neera Batra in a beautifully conceived program. Keshav Das's poetry was pioneering work of the Reetikal Hindi literature when the erotic element became predominant. This era is called Reeti, meaning procedure, because it was the age when poetic figures and theory were developed to the fullest, and poetry was a careful, crafted and mannered activity. But this emphasis on poetry theory greatly reduced the emotional aspects of poetry, the main characteristic of Bhakti movement, and the actual content of the poetry became less important. Although most Reeti works were outwardly related to Krishna Bhakti, their emphasis had changed from total devotion to the Supreme Being to the Shringaric or erotic aspects of Krishna's life, like Leela, his pranks with the gopis, and the description of the physical beauty of both Radha and Krishna became prominent. Most of the Reetikal poetry was written to please the ruler and divided the intensity of bhakti. Another important Reetikal poet was Matiram, whose Rasraj was written to please the rurals of the Kangra courts. The unique aspect of the Reetikal poetry is the fact that though it was not as popular as the bhakti poetry, it spawned entire albums of miniature paintings based on the works that saw Radha and Krishna as lovers rather than as divine beings. Both Rasikapriya and Rasraj were illustrated in paintings. The Reetikal poetry had a precursor in the poetry of Vidyapati. Vidyapati wrote in the 14th and 15th century and was known as the cuckoo of Maithili. The fundamental difference is that Vidyapati wrote poetry for himself and not in response to state sponsorship. In his writings, Vidyapati carried forward the line of sensual Vaishnava love poetry like that of who? Yes, Jayadeva, or 12th century, Geet Govinda. This tradition, which uses the language of physical love to describe the spiritual love, Vidyapati's poetry has been explored in Kathak dance by Uma Sharma, Shovana Narayan, Rashmi Vajpayee and Shikha Khare. Shikha Khare composed her work on Vidyapati's poetry in 2013 on the occasion of a performance for the Maithili Bhojpuri Academy in Delhi. Another titanic of the Reetikal poetry was Bihari. When Raja Jai Singh heard of the poet Bihari at the Mughal court, he invited him to Amber. There he asked him to present a couplet each day, for which he was awarded a gold coin. Eventually, 700 such couplets were written by Bihari that were collected into an anthology. The Satsai or Bihari Satsai, 700 verses of Bihari, is a famous work of the early 17th century in Brij Bhasha. It contains dohas or couplets, nitis or morals, and shringar or love. It is regarded as an important work of the Reetikal and is also celebrated in miniature paintings, where the Kangra portfolio is probably best known. In the Satsai, he used alankars from the Sanskrit poetic traditions, elements of Prakrit poetry, features of the Bengal school of Vaishnavism, and also certain aspects of Persian poetry, which had already begun to leave a deep mark on the courtly scenario. The fact that these poems were poetically rich reflected the envisioning of Radha and Krishna and referred repeatedly to the idea of vision or seeing, definitely suggests the logic of employing them in dance. Among the dancers who explored poetry in depth is Shovana Narayan. As early as in 1980, she created a work based on the flute, Ne Bansuri, on the occasion of Bansuri festival, organized by the Ragrang Society of Naina Devi. In that, Shovana wove in poems of Bihari as a representation of Vaishnavism parallels to the Sufi poetry of Rumi. Hence, Ne, which Rumi described as the eternal sound of the flute that we hear long after the flute has stopped playing. The historical period of Bihari was a time of increased contact between the two main religious communities of Hindu and Muslims. This, along with the fact that Bihari's writings were supported by one of the foremost Hindu nobles of the Mughal court, resulted in Bihari writings being outwardly a Hindu work. The Sat Sai embodies much of that is Mughal in spirit. Another poet from the Reetikal period was Padmakar, or Padmakar Bhatt as his full name was. Padmakar, born in 1753, belonged to a family of scholars, poets and literers for whom reason his family was called Kavishwar. They were patronized by the courts of Panna, Gwalior, Bundi, Udaipur and Jaipur. His work marks the continuation of the Rasa and rhetoric. He was a scholar of Riti Shastra, an excellent writer who wrote on the topics of bravery, love and devotion, and produced works as per the demands of his patrons. He had an exceptional command over Hindi language. His expressions were mostly lively, natural, realistic and sweet, in fact appropriate to the context. As a typical writer of the period, Padmakar mostly wrote about the Krishna's life, emphasizing more on the Shringaric aspects, his leelas, his relation with the gopis and the physical description and the beauty of Radha. His dohas or couplets were predominant about bhakti and shringar, which means love towards Lord Krishna and Radha. His works contain references to British rule, which he considered ominous and hoped would be reversed. He passed away in 1833. Some of his famous works are Padmakar R, Jagat Vinod, Padma Bharan, Prabodh Pachasa, Himmat Bahadur Virudavali, Ganga Lahari. Padmakar was one of those poets that contemporary generation of dancers of the Raigad Gharana explored in the spirit of regional jingoism. Dr. Vijaya Sharma, an exponent of the Raigad Gharana and disciple of Pandit Kartik Ram and Ramlal, dances the poetry of Padmakar often, as does Mohini Moghe from Jabalpur, a disciple of Pandit Kartik Ram and Guru Ramlal of the Raigad Gharana. Rashmi Vajpayee, a very senior disciple of Pandit Birju Maharaj, is also a dancer who has used the poetry of Padmakar, as is Jaipur Gharana Prerna Shrimali. Prerna has pursued her exploration of poetry and art that she is very fond of. By working on the poetry of Mirabai, especially in the context of the social milieu that governs the ethos of the people of Rajasthan. Keshavdas and Padmakar poetry has also been studied and worked on by her. Prerna's treatment of Padmakar's poem is unforgettable, as she depicted Radha with the palm of the hand and Krishna with the back of the hand, same hand suggesting the change in the character by the change in color. Very often, dancers use a varied selection of poems from these Bhakti and Reetikal poets to show a spectrum of images and moods around the worship, love and Bhakti of Krishna. For instance, Aurangabad-based Kathak dancer Parvati Datta, disciple of Pandit Birju Maharaj, often performs a suite of padas of Padmakar, Raskhan, Tulsidas. All these allow for Abhinay to rarer and infrequently seen compositions. The whole rich writings and poems of the Reetikal have really enriched the content of Kathak. Thank you.